question here. How do I stay on track at work? This was from a woman, and she described in her direct message that she eats really clean during the week and during the days when she is at home, and then she gets to work and it all goes to hell because she says that she works in a corporate office and there's tons of like candy on the reception desks, assistant desks. Everybody's always bringing donuts in. People will go out for lunch and encourage her to come with them. So
it's always somebody's birthday, and there's cake and cookies and cupcakes.
Yeah. And I am going to preface this by saying I know firsthand what this is like because I worked obviously at a corporate job for, 5-6 years, and I completely understand there were always treats of some sort. I remember my assistant always had like M&Ms or like little Hershey Kisses on her desk, and everybody would always get them. So yeah, it's challenging. And I will say, like, it takes time and it does take a lot of willpower. I think what helped me the most was really identifying why I felt the need to engage and just reach for these sweet treats. There were a couple different reasons for myself, and I obviously let this woman know through direct message. But if you're listening, you obviously know that this is your answer. So I'm going a little bit more in depth here. I think the biggest thing was I was pretty much kind of on autopilot, and unconsciously every time, I don't want to say every time, but when I would have my assistant do a task, at least once a day, I would, go grab it for the little Hershey Kiss. And, as I'm talking to her, eating it. And I, before I even knew it, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I just had 3 Hershey Kisses.
Yeah, it adds up fast.
It does.
3-4 Hershey Kisses, 5 days a week, every week.
Yes. And I wasn't doing it every day, but definitely more often than not. And now I want to also say there's nothing wrong with having a Hershey Kiss every once in a while, but it can get daunting if you're doing it every single day. So first recognize, or just try to realize when you're doing it, because it does happen subconsciously. Again, I was on autopilot. And once I began to recognize it, because I knew that I was doing it too much. So I commend this woman for already understanding she's probably doing it too much. And that's the first realization. Like, once you can adapt that mindset, like, okay, I'm just doing this a little too much. How do I work through it? There's no fault in it. Everybody does this.
Right. I was going to say, she's probably also, now that she's conscious of it, doing it less than she was when she wasn't conscious of it. So as she started eating healthier in her day-to-day, like at home, she started noticing more that these things are present and that she is eating them. So like you said, that's already a huge first step, and it probably is better. Kind of in the same sense, like when we're working with clients and we have them food log. People always, just the act of writing it down, especially if you know somebody else is going to see it, but even just for yourself, writing down all the things that you eat during the day makes it very, very conscious, and you will even, I'll say, like, subconsciously start eating better, because not only do you not want to eat that thing, but you don't want to write it down. And you don't, and like that, really, there is a lot of truth to that.
100%. I wasn't even thinking that. That's a great analogy. I was going to say to my next point, that's amazing. I told my assistant, don't let me eat these. I really did. Like, I didn't say, like, do not let me eat these. Like, finger pointing.
This is your fault.
Not at all, because it was lovely for other people. You know, they wanted it, people who weren't trying to watch what they were eating, And I just said, the next time I come up to your desk, if you see me grab this, just gently put your hand and say, Elise, just don't. I told her, you don't have to say don't eat it, because like I said, I was on autopilot. I was just doing it. And that touch, it reinforces my mental capacity to say to myself, oh yeah, wait, I do not need this Hershey Kiss right now. So just being hyper aware of it. Now, donuts were something that everybody brought in the mornings. Luckily, I do love my donuts, but I've never really been a sweet craved person for breakfast foods. Like I don't love, I like pancakes and waffles and things like that, but sweets weren't something that I typically wanted as a breakfast food. So I could kind of remove myself from that situation. But birthdays, cakes, like that was something that was really challenging. But I think you have to just understand that telling yourself, is the price that I'm going to pay for not feeling that well and for just an immediate release of that dopamine hit of sugar rush for 20 minutes, is it worth it? Is it worth it? And that's a great question, because I began posing that to myself. And I also began really observing how other people were making me feel when either I did or didn't eat that cake. I'm using cake as an example, but it was really any sweets that were coming along or lunches that were being brought out, burritos, burgers, things that are really heavy. And people would encourage me to, eat with them. Like, let's all order lunch and then we'll sit in the common area and have lunch together. And I loved it. I loved that community aspect. But eating out, 5 days a week, it can take a toll on your body. So if you want, start slow. Same thing with kind of how we coach our clients to come off like a sugar addiction. If people are going out to lunch or ordering lunch 3, 4, 5 times a week, and you're one of those people who are doing it, just try to cut back incrementally. So instead of doing it 5 days a week, go to 4. Then the next week, go to 3. Then the next week, go to 2. Then the next week, you're going to be at 1 day. Or meal prep. Meal prep your lunches, your snacks beforehand, and you can still have that community aspect if you're going to a cafeteria or in a common room where you're eating, but you've prepped the food yourself. Because when you do that, when you're cooking the foods that you want to eat, make it something exciting that's not boring, that you can bring to lunch.
That's a huge...
And it's going to make you feel so much better too. Because I also noticed when I was eating the sugary candies, the cakes, or if I was ordering out for lunch like my colleagues were, it was delicious in the moment, but then I crashed very hard after. And that was my mental rehearsal. Is this dopamine hit? Is this,
does that mouthfeel for a few minutes?
Is it worth it? Because then it was like, oh my gosh, I need more tea. I need another caffeine at the end of the day. So it's just gradually doing what's best for you. And it's kind of, I don't want to say peer pressure-y, but it can be in an office setting like that. Why aren't you having the piece of cake, Elise? That used to always be. And you knew my group of friends from my work. And I kind of became like, oh, Elise isn't going to eat that piece of cake anymore. And that was after, a couple months of me putting my foot down and not eating it, feeling very empowered not to eat it. And at that point, I was like, thank you. Thank you for recognizing it, because this is me and this is my decision. This is for my mental health. This is for the health of my body. And my friends began to respect that. My colleagues began to respect that. So you just have to lay the foundation work and kind of assert your boundary almost, where I didn't have boundaries in the workplace when I first began, especially with food, because food is such an issue. There was, at least for me. So I kind of just explained to them, it's not worth it for me. I'm really trying to better myself, to be more healthy, to be very particular in the foods that I'm eating. And if you say it in a kind and compassionate way where it's not, because I feel, and this is an observation that I'm making from my coworkers' perspective, I shouldn't make assumptions, but I felt that they were feeling that I was judging them for eating the cake and I wasn't. And so they in turn were feeling badly. But woman who wrote in for this, don't feel bad. You have to take care of yourself and your health first. You are the priority. You're not responsible for anybody else's feelings. You're not responsible for other people bringing in outside food. Once you get to that point of being able to discuss your health and saying, this is what makes me feel good, not having the piece of cake, I'm happy to sing happy birthday. I'm here, happy to have, the glass of water to cheers everybody for it. It's really empowering. You have to set the boundary of really taking control of your health and what you're putting in your body. Because you're not going to be able to control what people bring in. It's the control of what you can put into your body.
The only thing we have any control over is our choices.
Yes.
And I think what you're saying there, like, especially like in our society, like there's always going to be pressure. You see like the memes going around where it's like we eat so terribly as a culture that like when someone decides they're going to eat real foods, it's labeled as like a crazy diet. And people will feel bad about themselves when they see you choosing not to. And then it's like almost like if we can pull this person in with us, then we're all good. But having one person that's not eating the donuts makes everybody who's eating the donuts feel like they're doing something wrong.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate because it is like this person who wrote in, or like, you know, you've been in the situation, anyone, like none of the people you worked with were like bad.
No,
like they weren't trying to like sabotage you.
Not at all.
And I'm not even like I'm putting words in their mouth, but I feel like in a lot of situations, what is happening is people are being kind of feeling bad about themselves or feeling like they're being judged, so they want to kind of pull you into that same thing. So it's like the misery loves company kind of idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I also wanted to add, like, what you're saying, like, is a process. It is going to take a while. Like, don't beat yourself up if you have a couple good days and then it's like, oh man, I really want one of those donuts.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's life. Like, we don't want to tell anybody, like, don't eat the donuts.
That's why I said do it incrementally.
Yeah,
Steps,
exactly.
right? That's the building momentum.
Yeah.
If you're used to eating out 4 or 5 times a week, just cut down once. And if you can only do that for a month, then after 4 weeks, cut it down to 3 days a week. Again, it's the small steps, the building the momentum. If you're used to going out to eat, or if you're used to, like, if you have a cafeteria or something and you're used to, you can bring maybe, a salad with you, or bring like leftover beef of something so that you're not eating the entire meal of the cafeteria food because it tends to be cooked in bad oils, bad butters, things like that. So when you can control even a little aspect of it, it's a huge win. And you just, like you said, you have to get over that hump. It does take time. Everything takes time,
of course, yeah. And what I wanted to, like, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, pat yourself on the back for this, for, again, it's the realization of it.
Yeah, and then I would kind of piggyback on the back of that is what also is really, really useful is to know yourself.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, maybe you do need to avoid going into the cafeteria, or if you have like a break room with a refrigerator and there's going to be donuts on the counter, just don't go in there. And bring food that you shouldn't be using a microwave anyway. So bring foods that you can eat cold, and or that you can let sit out in your office. Like if there's steps you need to take to support yourself for a while until your willpower builds up, take those steps. And I think another one is taking an extreme step and being like, okay, for the next 30 days, I'm not having any junk food.
Yes.
Or pick a thing. I'm not having any donuts, or I'm not having any cake.
Yeah.
And then it helps to have that hard line. I know it helps for me. Because if I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to have like some junk food sometimes, that spirals where it's like, yeah, I'm not lying to myself. I'm having some. I didn't have any yesterday, so I'm going to have a bunch of it today. And that adds up pretty quick as well. But if you can draw the hard line and be like, no, I promised myself for the next 30 days, I'm not doing this at all. Saying no gets a lot easier. And it might sound like it's harder, but I think it's a lot easier because you're not tempted. You're not having a bite of cake and then throwing out the rest of the, like, that's the hardest thing. I can't do that.
No, you cannot.
So this is my example. Like, when it comes to like knowing yourself, I know either I'm going to have junk food or I'm not. And it's like, okay, like it's a party or it's somebody's birthday, it's whatever. It's like, I'm going to have some cake and I'm not going to feel bad about having a big piece of cake.
Absolutely. I love that.
But if it's like a random Tuesday afternoon and I'm having lunch, I'm not going to also have a piece of cake. So that's, for me, it's like I have the days where I eat it and the days that I don't, and I'm going to be really strict on those days. And that helps me. And it also, go through 30 days of not eating any junk food, you're not going to want to eat junk food. No. And if you do, on the 31st day, if you come in and like, all right, I did it, I made it my 30 days, I'm having a couple donuts, I'm going to, we're going to go out for lunch, I'm going to have fries, and I'm going to have fried food, you're going to feel awful. I promise. and that's also like that day, like on the 32nd day, you're going to be like, I am not doing that again.
Yeah.
and you're gonna. That's when, and that sort of correlates to what you were saying before, where then you can start realizing, oh, okay, I see how this makes me feel. I see how this makes me feel. I know if I pack a salad and a steak or some chicken, I'm gonna feel great. If I come in and just sort of wing it and buy and eat what's available, I'm not gonna feel great. It makes that decision a lot easier because like 100%. Feeling great is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully that gave a little bit of insight. There's time is everything. Don't beat yourself up, exactly what you're saying. Meal prep as much as you can. Build those small steps of momentum. Do things incrementally if you can. And know yourself. Yeah. If it's a hard stop, I'm not going to do this for 30 days or even 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Next question?
Yeah, let's move on.